Hello learners, welcome to another module of Introduction to Data Science using AI Assistant Tools. I am Dr. Vishwas Kukreti and today we will be beginning our module 5 which is Visualizing Data. Let's together begin this wonderful journey of understanding data science. First, a quick recap. In the last few modules, what we understood was understanding data science and setting up the required tools. In the next module, we understood descriptive statistics. We used AI assistant tools and Google Colab to run Python code to calculate certain measurements such as averages, median, mode from numbers. Today we will be converting these numbers into pictures that tell stories. Now, what are these stories and why data visualization? As you must have heard, a picture is equal to 1000 words. So, numbers alone can be confusing and hard to remember, whereas pictures help our brain understand patterns quickly. Consider an example where a person says sales increased by 23% and pitch it against a graph showing an upward arrow. You will recognize that looking at the graph, it's easier to understand that the sales increased. Where numbers do give an advantage of being exact, it's easier to make a decision if you use a graph. And you would see a real life visualization all around you. For example, you would see market vendors arranging vegetables by size. Or if you would see a school attendance registers with ticks and crosses. So instead of writing present and absent for each person, the teacher could just put ticks and crosses against a name, and that would help easily visualize who was present in a class. Similarly, if you would see a cricket scoreboard, as India is a cricket loving nation, all of you must have seen this particular visualization while watching a cricket match. Instead of looking over the numbers, it's very easy to look over this graph and understand how does the scorecard evolve of two different teams. As you would see, as the overs progress, you can see how different teams made runs and also if they got any wickets in that particular over. So you would see a visualization gives you not only one statistical understanding but an understanding of different measures. It's easier to look at a graph and get a more overall holistic information of the entire picture going around. Now, let's quickly understand our data science process as we have laid out in the previous modules. The step 1, as we remember, was collecting data. We learned in our previous modules that we can use different methods and different ways to collect data. The next steps were to calculate statistics. We learned what are mean, median and averages and how can we use to describe our data. Now we are in the step 3 where we are going to visualize data, and after visualization comes the important step in the process of data science, which is to find patterns and make informed decisions. Now the question arises, what can good visualization show? Let's quickly look at this graph, and it says which district has more wheat production. Now if you just look at this graph, it's very easy for you to understand the district Jabalpur produces the most amount of wheat. You did not have to go over through a table to understand how much wheat every district produces. Your eyes were instinctively taken towards the biggest bar or the graph there, and you would see the biggest building or the bar chart you are seeing on your screen could tell you that information. So bar charts tell you that comparison. It's very easy to do a comparison using visualizations. Similarly, visualizations can also show you trend. For example, if you are interested in knowing are vegetable prices going up or down, instead of looking at prices at different months, if you laid out a chart, you can see how prices behave during different months. You can, for example, say the prices of tomatoes are always higher than the prices of onion. Now, you need not do a table wise comparison, this graph instantly tells you that. Similarly, graph visualization can also help you to understand distributions. Now, what do we mean by distributions is how your data is distributed across, how your data is scattered across. For example, if you would look in this graph, it's very easy to understand that most of the students, let's say 41 to 60% of the students, get the average number of marks. So this kind of distribution graph visualization is called histogram, which we will learn in our module today. And it's very easy to see that most of the class gets an average number of marks. So it's shown that data visualization can help you do trends, comparison, and even show distributions. Now, what's our goal for this module? Our goal for this module is multiple fold. So first we will learn what different charts look like. Then we will understand when to use which chart. And as being the process of this series, we will create our own charts using our AI assistant tools and run those codes on Google Colab. But before we begin with data visualization, I need to point out towards an important task. First, we need to understand, before we begin data visualization, are certain libraries which are important for visualizing data in Python. Now, what are these Python libraries? So, consider libraries like ready-made tools for a specific task. For example, if you have a toolbox where you have hammer for nails, or you have screwdrivers for screws. Similarly, for visualization, we use special chart making libraries in Python, which make the task of creating these graph visualizations much easier. Else, it would have been very cumbersome to write code from scratch. The most famous data visualization library in Python is matplotlib. If you search on Google, you would find across it has a repository and you can read the documentation over there. The name means mathematical plotting library. The good thing about matplotlib is it is very tightly integrated into the Python ecosystem and can create almost any type of chart which we need. We will work with matplotlib in today's session. The next library is Seaborn. So Seaborn is a library which is built on top of matplotlib, but it's simpler to use. It creates beautiful charts with less code. For now, we will learn the basics of data visualization, and I encourage you to build different plots using matplotlib and Seaborn and create a comparison out of them. Now, how do these libraries work? You would essentially see an import statement at the start of our different codes. So this what import does it brings in the tools from those libraries to our environment, and we can use the functions of those libraries in your code. Those functions are essentially very simple commands from the library to make charts. Now, our AI assistant tool will help us write these commands correctly. So even though if we are not sure of the syntax how matplotlib creates a graph visualization, we are sure that our AI assistant tool can help us in our data science journey. Now, I would also want to put across, don't worry about memorizing the syntax. As has been the course of our series, we are not memorizing library commands. We are rather trying to get an intuition about the data science world. Essentially, we are offloading the task of generating code to our AI assistant tool. Here, the AI assistant tool ChatGPT will generate the code for us. So instead of memorizing the syntax, we need to be logical and just need to understand what we want to show. So instead of doing a cumbersome routing, you need to be more logical and more reason focused. Now, since the code is produced in ChatGPT, we need an environment where we can run that code. As we have talked once, let's again go back to our fundamentals. So, we generate code using ChatGPT, but we use Google Colab to run that code. So, you can go to colab.research.google.com to visit your Google Colab environment. Now, the only requirement is to use Google Colab is to have a Google account. So, sign in with your Gmail account, and the welcome window will have a tab where it will show new notebook. So, if you hit on a new notebook, you would get a Google Colab window with a text cell or a code cell there. where you will input your code and run it. So again, let's break down these steps for our data visualization module. So the first step in our data science module for data visualization is to tell ChatGPT what you exactly want. For example, if I want a data visualization which is a bar chart, and we will come to what a bar chart is, but let's quickly understand the steps first. So you can prompt ChatGPT or your AI assistant tool of choice to write Python code to create a bar chart, and then you say showing wheat production in 5 districts. So we have seen this example earlier, but we are prompting ChatGPT to create this chart for us. So we ask our AI assistant tool to create a Python code to create a bar chart showing wheat production in 5 districts. Indore 500 tons, Bhopal 450 tons, Jabalpur 600 tons, Gwalior 400, Ujjain 550, and we ask ChatGPT to use matplotlib. For example, if you see on your screen, we give this prompt to the ChatGPT. Now the step 2 is to copy the code from ChatGPT. ChatGPT will give you the Python code. So select all the code. You will see a copy code box in the screen. You can also hit that button to automatically copy the Python code. Or you can select the entire text, right click and select copy, or you can even do a Ctrl+C. So if you see, ChatGPT generates the Python code here. What we are going to do is to hit copy code that's on the right hand side of our screen. The next step is to paste and run that in Google Colab. So if you have already visited colab.research.google.com, you would see a code cell appears in the Google Colab environment. In the code cell, we paste our code, and also you would see there is a play button on the left side of the cell. So we hit that play button to execute the code. Now it might happen that the Google Colab environment might take few seconds to spin up and get you on board. So wait 2-3 seconds for the chart to appear. So but what happens when you run the code? Google Colab reads the code line by line and uses our library of choice, which here is matplotlib, to draw the required chart, and the chart appears right below your code cell. For example, this is our Google Colab screen where we have pasted our code which we got from ChatGPT and the play button. Now if we hit that play button, you can see a data visualization, which is a bar chart here appearing on your screen. Now this looks a certain bit different from the one which we saw in the previous slide, but here you can see that Jabalpur still has the highest production of wheat, as denoted by the bar over Jabalpur district label. So you would see in very 3 small steps we were able to convert numbers into visualization. Now you can also find some common beginner mistakes and solutions. While the steps are pretty simple, you can sometimes forget to click the play button, which will not execute your cell. So the solution is to always click that play button to execute your code. It might also happen that you paste your code in wrong cell. If you see, Google Colab provides you 2 kinds of cells. One is a text cell and one is a code cell. If you paste your code in a text cell, it won't execute as a code, but it would take it as a textual box. So you always paste your code in the right place, which is a code cell. Sometimes it might happen that your code might throw errors. In that case, the solution is very simple. You copy the error, paste in your AI assistant tool and ask for fix. The AI assistant tools are sufficiently smart enough to understand the error and provide the recommended correction. Now let's understand different chart types. Now since we have understood the flow of how are we going to create different visualizations, let's begin our understanding different chart types. So different questions need different charts. It's very simple, different tools for different jobs. As you cannot use a hammer for a screwdriver or a screwdriver for hammering a nail. Different data visualization options are used for different questions. Today we will learn 6 common types of charts. So let's begin in understanding the first kind of chart. As you can see on your screen, a bar chart is visible. Now, what is a bar chart? A bar chart shows comparison between different categories. What it uses rectangular bars of different heights. And taller the bar, the higher the value is. As we saw in the Jabalpur wheat example, Jabalpur had the tallest bar, which meant Jabalpur produced the highest amount of wheat in that particular year. So, a bar chart is a very simple kind of chart which uses rectangular bars, and the taller the bar, higher the value. Now, the question arises is when to use a bar chart. So, you use a bar chart when you are comparing quantities across different groups. For example, if you are comparing sales in different shops, if you have shop A, shop B, shop C, and you want to compare how much sale they did in a particular year, what you will do is you will use a bar chart and plot their sale in a bar chart. Similarly, as we have already seen the example, you can use a bar chart to do a comparison, like we did a comparison for crop production in different districts. Now, for example, you can also see here for vegetable prices. If you are comparing vegetable prices, instead of learning or going through the entire data sheet, you can easily use ChatGPT and Google Colab to visualize them. The higher the bar is higher the cost of that particular vegetable. For example, here we can see tomato has the highest or the tallest bar. So, that means for this particular session, tomato has the highest cost. Now, why are we insisting on knowing the tallest and the smallest? In the most frequent decision making scenarios, most of the decisions are made according to the biggest or the smallest value. For example, if you are working out your budget or home budget for a month, you would probably buy only half kgs of tomato and let's say maybe 2 kgs of potato. So, you can ration your budget accordingly if you know the visualizations. Where numbers do give you an advantage over charts, charts are more advantageous for making an instantaneous and informed decision. Now, let's see the ChatGPT prompt for creating a bar chart. You can use this prompt where you can only change the data part. I'll encourage you to copy this prompt and execute in ChatGPT and then run the code in Google Colab. So, the prompt for a bar chart is pretty simple. We ask our AI assistant tool to write the Python code using, again, the library of our choice is matplotlib. So, we ask ChatGPT to write a Python code using matplotlib to create a bar chart. Then we provide it data. So, we say number of students in each class. So, we want ChatGPT to draw a bar chart where it shows which class has the highest number of children. So, we say class 6 has 45, 7 has 52, 8 has 48, 9 has 40 students and 10 has 38 students only. And we also put a constraint and we ask it to label the axes clearly. Now, axes are the x and y axes of your chart. Now, you would see ChatGPT would give you a code. If you execute it in Google Colab, you will find a graph which is pretty similar to what you see on your screen. So, the y axis shows number of students and the classes are on the x axis. So, the x axis shows the different labels, for example, class 6, class 7, class 8, etc. Whereas the number of students is shown in the y axis. So, it is the axis which has the numbers and the numbers grow on. So, 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, this is on the y axis. Our graph even has a title. So, the title of our graph is number of students in each class. So, you would see it is pretty simple to create a bar chart using your AI assistant tool. You just need to paste the data and ask it to create a code to create a bar chart. Now, we can move on to understanding something called histogram. Now, while histogram may look pretty similar to a bar chart, it is very different than a bar chart. So, whereas a bar chart shows how the taller the value, taller the building or taller the bar, higher the value is. A histogram shows how data is scattered across different ranges. Now, we will also understand what does a range mean in the forthcoming modules, but a histogram essentially shows how your data set is scattered across. It groups numbers into bins. For example, if I am interested in knowing how many students score 0 to 20, 21 to 40, 41 to 60, 61 to 80 and 81 to 100, then this would be called binning of the students. So I create 5 bins and all of the students, for example, if only 10 students have numbers between 0 to 20, 0 to 20 bin would get a frequency score of 10. Similarly, 21 to 40 could get a score of 5 and so on and so forth. So it may look like a bar chart, but it does not show what a bar chart shows. Rather, it shows how the data is distributed across. So if you can see on your screen, this is how a histogram looks like. The y-axis shows frequency and the x-axis shows ranges, and the bars touch each other to show continuity. Now we'll come across this to show what frequency and ranges mean. So bar chart versus histogram. So whereas you can compare separate categories in a bar chart, you can have different, a histogram shows distributions. And histogram bars touch each other, whereas bar charts have gaps. So there are certain differences between a bar chart and a histogram. So the ChatGPT prompt for a histogram is pretty straightforward. It says write Python code using matplotlib to create a histogram. The data is daily wages in rupees of 30 workers, 250, 300, 280, 320, so on and so forth. And then we ask it to distribute it into 5 bins. So you would see such plot you would get, which shows with the most number of workers have a daily earning between 275 to 325. Now we can also understand what a line chart is. So a line chart is something which shows how something changes over time, and data is connected with a line. So an upward line shows an increase, where a downward line shows a decrease. For example, the scorecard which we show, or the rainfall in a particular year. All these instances are example of a line chart. Now when you use a line chart, so when you are tracking temperature across months, or if you are monitoring prices over years, or if you are following a single student's attendance throughout the term. For example, if you are tracking onion prices from January to June, a line chart can show if your prices are rising, falling, or staying stable. And the vegetable traders can predict best time to buy, sell. The ChatGPT prompt for a line chart is also pretty straightforward. As we have seen, you can ask ChatGPT to write a Python code using matplotlib to create a line chart showing monthly rainfall in millimeters, and then you provide the data. Then you ask it to label axis and add a title. So you would see ChatGPT provides you a data or a graph visualization, something like this. We will see much of such visualizations in the next module. For now, I encourage you to go back to the basics and understand how are we using AI assistant tools and how data visualization tools are necessary in our data science process. We will see in the next session. Thank you.